Your wife is lying. Your kids are too young to understand, but they're telling you things that don't add up. Every mile on her car is a silent confession. And when you finally uncover the truth, it isn't just betrayal. It's a man laughing at you behind your back. So you decide to destroy him. Not with fists. Not with yelling. But with one carefully planned move that rips his life to pieces. His marriage. His job. His home gone. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever wanted to see karma show up with a sledgehammer, hit that like button. Subscribe for more real-life stories where the cheaters and liars finally get what's coming to them. Now let's go back to the early 2000s. I was married. 2 kids. 4 and 6. We weren't rich, but we were stable. I thought we were happy. My wife had a part-time job, and on the days she wasn't working, she said she was driving the kids out to her parents' house. 90 minutes each way. Seemed a little excessive, but I didn't question it at first. Until my kids started talking. Little things. They'd mention Grandma's house on days she said she was running errands. They described toys and rooms that didn't exist at her parents' house. It was like hearing a cracked note in a song you've known your whole life. Once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Subtle sound of a ticking clock behind narrator. I asked her directly one night, "Why so many trips to your parents?" She looked me dead in the eyes and lied. She'd always been a terrible liar. Something in me shifted. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deception. That's when I started tracking her car mileage. A cheap, old-school trick. Jotting down the odometer reading every morning and night. The numbers didn't lie. 400 extra miles a week. I knew. I just didn't have proof yet. One morning, she left for work and I sat down at the computer. There on the desk, a sticky note. Her AOL password scribbled in her handwriting. It was like the universe itself had opened a door. I logged in, my heart pounding, so hard I could hear it in my ears. Emails. Dozens of them. Not to me. Not from family. From her college best friend. And right there, in black and white, my wife talking about how she was regularly sleeping with an ex-boyfriend from high school. She even mocked his wife. Said she'd gotten fat after having kids. Every word was a knife. Pause for effect. Narrator's voice drops lower. I printed every email. Slipped them into a folder. Closed the computer. Sat in silence, staring at the wall. The betrayal was bad enough. But my parents had cheated on each other, and the fallout wrecked my childhood. I swore my kids would never live through that. If I was going to end this, I was going to do it cleanly. Strategically. No screaming. No scenes. I called a friend who was a cop. He told me about a guy named Ron, an ex-police officer turned private investigator. I met Ron in a quiet coffee shop. The kind of place where nobody knows your name. I slid the folder of emails across the table. Ron flipped through them, his expression unreadable. "I'll find out everything," he said. I paid his retainer. Gave him every scrap of information I had. Then I waited. Cue slow, suspenseful background music. Ron was good. Within days, he had a report. Photos, timestamps, addresses. My wife would drive the kids to her parents. Meet the guy for lunch. Then they'd check into a dumpy roadside motel. A few hours later, she'd pick up the kids and come home to me like nothing happened. Every date. Every time. Documented. It was worse than I'd imagined. But now I had the truth. And the truth is power. I asked Ron to dig deeper. Who was this man? His name was Bob. Married. 3 kids. A vice president of sales at his father-in-law's company. So this wasn't just some fling. This was a man with a public image. A career built on family connections. A nice home that belonged to his wife's parents. A man who thought he could take from me, laugh about it, and walk away untouched. That's when my anger turned into focus. It wasn't enough to end my marriage. Bob needed to feel the cost too. Narrator voice sharpens. I went to my lawyer. Had the divorce papers drawn up. Meanwhile, Ron prepared multiple copies of his report. Then I gave Ron one more task. Something I'd been planning in silence. At 11 a.m., my wife was at work when she was served divorce papers. No shouting. No warning. Just a quiet end to a life built on lies. At 11:30 a.m., Ron met Bob's wife in a small cafe. He handed her the full report, the photos, the dates, the motel receipts. He told her everything. I never met her. I didn't need to. She deserved to know. What she did with that information was her choice. But oh, did she act. Within days, Bob's life imploded. His wife cleaned out their joint account, took the kids, moved out. When her father found out, the same man who owned the company Bob worked for and the house they lived in, Bob was fired, evicted. The divorce turned ugly. Publicly available court documents show a battlefield of restraining orders, criminal charges, even jail time. At one point, Bob showed up at the house to argue. It escalated until his brother-in-law stepped in and broke his nose. Everything he'd built on lies collapsed like a house of cards. I can't find Bob online anymore. Last I heard, he left the state. His ex-wife, though, she went to work at her father's company and eventually took over after he retired. She and her kids did fine. As for me, my ex, and I managed a civil co-parenting relationship. When the kids turned 18, I cut off contact. I don't hate her. I just don't care anymore, except as she relates to our kids. People think revenge is about rage. It's not. It's about taking back power. Bob thought he was untouchable. My wife thought she could rewrite our lives, while I stayed in the dark. But truth is a weapon. Timing is a weapon. And sometimes the quietest moves hit the hardest. Climactic revenge payoff, 1 to 2 minutes. Picture Bob, VP of sales, 3 kids, a house, a career, a wife. Now picture him standing outside that same house with a broken nose, a restraining order in his hand, no job, no family, no home. All because he underestimated the man whose life he tried to steal. That's the image that stayed with me. That's the moment everything balanced. Reflective wrap-up, 15 to 20 seconds. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just quietly moved the pieces. And when the dust settled, the cheaters lost everything they'd gambled. Sometimes karma doesn't need to wait. Sometimes it just needs a plan. What do you think? Was this revenge too much, or perfectly fair? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever wanted to see cheaters get exactly what they deserve, hit that like button and subscribe. We've got more stories where justice isn't just poetic, it's devastating.